So we're diving into the Dhammapada, verses and stories, and let me tell you, this first verse, it's like a wisdom bomb.
It really is. So we're gonna unpack the meaning of this first verse, and then we're gonna kind of explore how it all connects to this really interesting story about a man named Thera.
Okay, so Therakakapala, he was a blind man,
Right.
right? But he also, like, achieved enlightenment,
That's right.
which, I don't know, it seems a little, counterintuitive.
Absolutely. The first verse states, all mental phenomena have mind as their forerunner. They have mind as their chief. They are mind-made. If one speaks or acts with an evil mind, dukkha follows him just as the wheel follows the hoofprint of the ox that draws the cart.
Okay, well, hold on. There's a lot to unpack there. Mind is their forerunner, mind made.
They come first. Then our actions, and then the consequences of those actions, which is what Buddhists call dukkha.
Dukkha. That's kind of loaded word, isn't it?
It is. Think of dukkha as like all those moments when things just don't feel right. It could be anything from stubbing your toe, to like feeling really deeply disappointed or anxious. It's just that sense that things aren't as they should be.
So wait, so does that mean if I think negative thoughts, I'm like setting myself up for a lifetime of like stubbed toes and just feeling disappointed all the time?
Not exactly. It's it's a bit more nuanced than that. The verse uses this really powerful analogy of a cartwheel following an ox. So our actions follow our intentions, just like that cartwheel is bound to follow the ox's path.
Okay, I get the analogy. But like, isn't that a bit simplistic? I mean, we can't control everything in life.
Of course not. Of course not. But the verse is really highlighting this undeniable power of our minds, right? If we're constantly like dwelling on negative thoughts, it's going to influence how we see the world, how we react to things.
Okay, so it's less about like avoiding every single negative thought and more about like the overall vibe we're putting out there.
Exactly. Cultivating a positive mindset can lead to a more positive experience of life, Doesn't mean you won't face any challenges, but it can definitely change how you deal with those challenges.
Okay, that makes sense. So this whole idea that like our minds shape our reality, that's definitely a big one. But how does the story of Kakupala, the blind man,
Yeah.
how does he fit into all this?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, right? Because the verse might seem a little abstract, so let's bring it to life with a story. So, Kakupala, he was an Arhat. Think of it like someone who's reached peak enlightenment, like complete freedom from suffering.
Okay.
But here's the catch. He was also blind.
Hold on. How can you be like enlightened and blind? That doesn't sound very free from suffering to me.
Right. It's a total head scratcher. I mean,
Yeah.
if you've reached that level of spiritual understanding, shouldn't you also be like free from things like blindness? Even some of the Buddha's own disciples were puzzled by this.
So how did the Buddha explain it? What was the deal with Kakupala's blindness?
So, according to the Buddha, Kakupala's blindness was a direct result of actions he had committed in a past life. He had been a physician who blinded a woman out of spite.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a tough situation.
Yeah.
But like, if enlightenment doesn't erase karma, then what's the point of even striving for it?
That's a really great question, and it highlights a really important distinction. Enlightenment doesn't necessarily wipe away the effects of our past actions, right? But it changes how we relate to those effects. Like, it frees us from the suffering that comes from clinging to those experiences.
So Kakupala was still blind, but he wasn't like letting it make him miserable.
Exactly. He had achieved a state of mental liberation where he wasn't like bound by the limitations of his physical reality. He was able to experience peace and joy despite his blindness.
Okay, so this story definitely shows us how powerful karma can be. But like, how does it connect back to that first verse? The idea that our minds shape our reality.
Well, what's fascinating here is that both the verse and the story, they really emphasize the importance of intention. Kakupala's blindness was a result of a very, very negative intention in a past life.
And verse 1 tells us that all our actions, they start with an intention. And those intentions shape our experiences, for better or worse.
Precisely. Even if we don't experience like traumatic karmic consequences like Kakupala did, our mental state is constantly shaping our world, right? It's like we're always creating ripples, whether we realize it or not.
Ripples, huh? That makes me think of, like the butterfly effect.
Exactly. That idea that something as small as a butterfly flapping its wings can eventually cause, like, a hurricane on the other side of the world.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing when you think about it.
Mm.
But if our thoughts are like those butterfly wings, are we saying that we're responsible for hurricanes in other people's lives? That feels like a lot of pressure.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's not about, blaming ourselves for every little thing that goes wrong in the world. It's more about recognizing that we're all part of this interconnected web, right? And our thoughts and our actions, they do have an impact, even if we can't always see it.
So it's less about like guilt and more about just realizing that like we all have a role to play in creating a more positive reality.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Think about it this way. If you're constantly putting out negative energy, it's like you're releasing a swarm of those negative butterflies into the world.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. I see how that wouldn't be helpful. But like on the flip side, if we make a conscious effort to focus on like kindness and compassion and those sorts of positive vibes.
And you're contributing to a more harmonious and peaceful world, both for yourself and for others. It's like a ripple effect of positivity.
So we're not just like meditating on a mountaintop. There's
Yeah.
there's like an active component to this.
Absolutely, absolutely. The Buddha actually placed a lot of emphasis on right action as part of this path to enlightenment.
Okay, so what exactly does right action look like?
So right action is about acting ethically, skillfully, and with compassion. It's about aligning our actions with our highest intentions and working towards creating a positive impact on the world.
So it's about more than just being like a good person. There's a level of like wisdom and intentionality involved.
Precisely, precisely. It's not enough to just avoid doing bad things. Right action means actively using our understanding to make choices that benefit ourselves and others.
This whole concept of right action. It reminds me of something you said earlier about the Buddha encouraging his followers to engage with the world. It almost sounds like there's like a social justice aspect to this ancient philosophy.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation. And you're right, the Buddha's teachings were about creating a world where all beings could thrive, could experience true happiness. It's not just about personal liberation, right? It's about collective well-being.
Wow. Okay. So this whole concept of karma is way deeper than I initially realized. It's not just about, individual actions and consequences. It's about, interconnectedness, collective responsibility, and using our thoughts and actions to make the world a better place.
Yeah, it really is. And it's a message that's incredibly relevant, I think, in today's world, which is more interconnected than ever before. The choices we make, both individually and collectively, they have a huge impact on the future.
So where does all this like leave us? What's the key takeaway for our listener?
I think the biggest takeaway is the importance of mindfulness. We need to pay attention to our thoughts, our intentions, and how our actions are impacting ourselves and the world around us.
So it's about realizing that we're not just along for the ride. We're active participants in creating our reality,
Yeah,
both individually and collectively.
exactly. And it's a powerful and incredibly empowering realization.
This whole conversation's really got me thinking, if our thoughts are that powerful, maybe I should spend less time doom scrolling and more time, I don't know, visualizing world peace or something.
That's the beauty of these teachings, right? They challenge us to really take responsibility for our inner world and to see how it connects to the outer world.
It's a lot to process,
Yeah.
but it's also pretty inspiring. Before we wrap up, I want to bring it back to our listener. After all, this whole deep dive was crafted just for them based on their interest in this topic.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've explored some pretty profound concepts here, about the power of the mind and karma and the importance of mindful action.
So to leave our listener with something to ponder, maybe a question to like spark some further reflection.
How about this? If our thoughts really do shape our reality, how much control do we actually have over our experiences through our thoughts and actions?
Oh, okay. That's a deep one. It's like you're challenging us to look in the mirror and ask, am I creating the life I want, or am I just letting my thoughts run wild?
Yeah, it's a question that invites us to really examine our mental patterns and to consider whether we're letting our thoughts control us or if we're consciously choosing thoughts that empower us and lead to greater well-being.
It's a reminder that we're not just victims of circumstance.
Mm.
We have agency. We have the power to choose our thoughts, our responses, and ultimately to shape the direction of our lives.
Exactly, exactly. And that's a truly empowering realization.
Well said. To our listener, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Buddhist philosophy. We hope you found some valuable insights and maybe even a little inspiration to cultivate a more mindful and intentional approach to life.
Until next time, may your thoughts be kind, your actions be wise, and your journey be filled with peace and purpose.